"Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from that casket." The airport security manager's voice broke through the thick silence, firm but uneasy. His hand raised just inches from the fallen soldier's coffin draped in the national flag. The tomb guard did not flinch. His gloved hands remained firmly planted on the casket's edge, his posture straight, eyes locked forward, completely silent. Around them, the usual airport hum came to a sudden halt. Passengers paused mid-step, conversations died mid-sentence. The atmosphere grew heavier, not with the weight of luggage or delays, but something far heavier, something sacred. At Gate 14, a quiet battle was unfolding. Not one fought with weapons or anger, but one of respect, dignity, and honor. "Sir, step back. You are not authorized to touch that cargo," the manager insisted, louder this time, signaling for security officers to approach, but the tomb guard stood unmoved, silent, unyielding finally. The guard's voice cut through, calm and steady, the kind of voice shaped by years of discipline and duty. "With all due respect, sir, this is not cargo. This is a fallen soldier, and I will not leave his side." A TSA officer stepped forward, clipboard in hand, voice tinged with frustration. "Look, we have strict protocols. You're delaying operations. We need this area cleared immediately." The guard's gaze did not waver. "Protocols. There are protocols, yes. And then there is honor." Behind the guard, the flag lay perfectly stretched over the casket. No wrinkle, no fold out of place. Beneath it, Sergeant Marcus Taylor, killed in combat overseas, 28 years old. He never came home on his own 2 feet. The tomb guard was assigned to escort Marcus, a sacred duty from the moment the coffin touched American soil until it reached his family. But this airport, this place buzzing with busy travelers and shifting priorities, didn't care. Their schedule was tight. Gates needed clearing, flights needed to depart. One more box to move along the conveyor belt was an inconvenience, nothing more. "This is not a funeral home," the manager snapped, frustration cracking his voice. "We don't do ceremonies here. Step aside or we will remove you," the guard could have explained, could have tried to make them understand the code. The centuries-old tradition of guarding the fallen, the solemn silence, the watch, the salute. But words failed him. Instead, memories flooded his mind. Marcus laughing during training, the long nights talking about home, the promise Marcus made to bring his medals back, the sister's graduation he'd missed. Marcus humming a country tune after every mission, joking it was his soul's GPS guiding him home. This wasn't just a delivery, it was a farewell, and the only thing keeping it from being forgotten was the guard himself. Just then, a small voice cut through the tension. "Mommy, why is he holding the flag?" A little girl, no older than 6, clutching a teddy bear, had wandered close. Her mother hushed her softly, but the guard looked down and gave a gentle nod because, he said softly, "He's making sure someone gets home." Looked shaken. The security officers paused. Something was shifting. The weight of sacrifice was finally sinking in. The guard bent slightly, voice barely above a whisper. "This man gave everything. This flag is not decoration. It's a promise." And with that, he began to move. Slow, steady, his hand never left the casket. He led the honor march through the crowded terminal, not because anyone gave him permission, but because duty never asks for permission. Passengers rose to their feet. Hats were removed. Hands went over hearts. A veteran in a wheelchair saluted. Tears streamed silently down faces. No one moved. Phones were raised, not for spectacle, but remembrance. Someone started singing the national anthem softly, and soon others joined. In that busy, noisy airport, time seemed to stop. By the time the guard reached the waiting family at the gate, his gloves were soaked with sweat. His back ached. His throat burned. But he did not falter. The mother broke down the moment she saw the coffin. The father saluted, trembling. The sister dropped to her knees, whispering, "Welcome home, Marcus." The guard stood silently. Then, carefully, he released the flag. Folding it into a perfect triangle, he knelt and placed it gently in the mother's hands. "He did not die alone," he said quietly. "He was loved. He was honored." As he rose, every passenger watched. In reverent silence, the airport manager, eyes red and filled with regret, stepped forward. "I didn't understand," he whispered. "I'm sorry." The guard nodded once. "Now you do." A slow, respectful applause filled the terminal, not loud, but deep and true. A chorus of realization echoing down the concourse. Because in that moment, America remembered. The terminal slowly returned to its usual rhythm. But something had changed, something invisible, yet undeniable. The crowd that once bustled impatiently was now quieter, more thoughtful. The faces of strangers held a shared weight, an unspoken respect for the sacrifice they had witnessed. Behind the scenes, the airport staff whispered among themselves. The manager, who had earlier ordered the guard to step aside, stood apart, staring at the gate where Marcus Taylor's family still gathered, holding the folded flag like a fragile piece of their broken world. Minutes earlier, he hadn't seen the man behind the uniform, just a rule to enforce, a schedule to keep. Now, he saw a guardian of honor, a bridge between a fallen soldier and the family who had lost everything. In a quiet corner, the tomb guard gathered his strength. His name was Sergeant David Harper, a veteran himself, handpicked for this sacred duty because he understood what it meant, the honor, the responsibility, the promise. He thought back to Marcus, how they'd trained together, pushing through pain and exhaustion in remote deserts, how Marcus had joked about his mom's cooking, how he'd smiled even in the darkest times. The memories fueled David's resolve. The airport was no battlefield, but here today he had fought for something just as real. "Dignity, Sergeant Harper," a voice called softly. It was the airport chaplain who had quietly arrived during the procession. He approached, offering a nod of solidarity. "Aye," David nodded. The chaplain stepped closer and laid a hand on his shoulder. "You did what many wouldn't," the chaplain said. "You reminded us all why we stand." David allowed himself a brief, tired smile. Outside the terminal, the family prepared to leave. Marcus's mother clutched the flag to her chest, tears still streaming down her face. His father, usually stoic, wiped a hand over his eyes. His sister remained kneeling, whispering prayers. Their grief was raw, their loss immeasurable. But thanks to David, their son, their brother, their hero, had come home not just as a name on a list or a box to be moved, but as a man worthy of respect, wrapped in the flag of his country and carried by a brother in arms. Word of the procession spread quickly. Passengers who had witnessed the moment shared it on social media. Videos captured the silent march, the tears, the rising anthem. Messages of gratitude and pride poured in. For many, it was a powerful reminder. The men and women in uniform were more than statistics or headlines. They were sons and daughters, friends and neighbors, each with a story, a family, a legacy. Back inside, the airport manager stood alone, reflecting. His initial impatience had given way to something deeper. Humility. He remembered his own grandfather, a veteran who had rarely spoken of the war but carried its scars silently. Now he understood the weight that guard had carried today, the weight of remembrance, respect, and love. He walked slowly toward David. "Sergeant," he said, voice soft, "thank you." David nodded, still tired but steady. "Just doing my duty." The manager's eyes met his. "Today, you taught all of us what duty really means." In the hours that followed, changes began quietly at the airport. New procedures were put in place to honor fallen soldiers and their escorts. Staff received briefings about the importance of respect and awareness. A small memorial was set up near the gate where Marcus Taylor had arrived, and somewhere in the midst of the daily chaos, a culture of honor was born. For David Harper, the journey was far from over. There would be more escorts, more soldiers, returning home in silence. But he carried the memory of today, the moment when strangers became witnesses to sacrifice, and an airport became a chapel of remembrance as he prepared to leave the terminal. David looked once more at the flag folded neatly in the family's hands. He whispered to himself, "Welcome home, brother." Days later, news of the airport escort spread beyond the terminal walls. Local news stations picked up the story. Social media was flooded with posts praising Sergeant David Harper's unwavering honor. People from across the country reached out to thank him, to share their own stories of sacrifice and loss. But for David, the real reward was quiet, the knowledge that he had stood as a guardian for one last journey, that he had held the line where others might have faltered. Back at the airport, changes took root. The once indifferent staff now moved with new purpose. Signs were posted reminding travelers and workers alike to honor the fallen. The management team committed to training all employees on the sacred protocols that accompany military escorts. Even the busiest gates saw moments of stillness now, where passengers would pause, remove hats, or bow their heads when a coffin passed. By one afternoon, David returned to Gate 14, not as an escort, but as a visitor. He approached the small memorial that had been set up, a single folded flag resting atop a wooden stand, surrounded by photos of Marcus Taylor in uniform, smiling, bright and alive. A handful of airport workers stood quietly nearby. One approached him, offering a respectful nod. "Sergeant Harper," she said softly, "thank you for reminding us all what honor really looks like." David smiled, tired but proud. "About me," he replied. "It's about every soldier who never made it home, every family who waits. We owe them that much." As he stood there, David's thoughts drifted to the families still waiting, the escorts still on their solemn duty. The line never ends. The sacrifices never stop, but neither does the honor. That night, as David sat alone in his modest apartment, he pulled out a letter from Marcus's mother. It was simple, heartfelt. She wrote, "Thank you for bringing Marcus home with dignity. You gave him the farewell he deserved. You gave us peace." David folded the letter carefully and placed it next to his worn uniform. For a moment, the weight of grief settled heavily on his chest. Then, slowly, a quiet strength rose within him. He was more than a guard. He was a keeper of promises, a bearer of light in moments of darkness. And as long as he could stand watch, no fallen soldier would ever be forgotten the next morning. David prepared for his next mission, another escort, another brother. To bring home because, in the end, duty does not ask for recognition, it only asks for honor.